What's up, you guys? Nick here. So, as I mentioned in the last video, I said that I would make a part two to the video. The last one was why I work 90 plus hours a week, and this one is going to be how I work 90 plus hours a week. And this is the video that I think is going to be much more important, where I split up how I did whenever I was 18 or 19 years old versus how I do now, because they were two very different working situations. So, to rewind, when I was 18 years old, I was working minimum wage job after minimum wage job. I live in Texas, so our minimum wage is still at 7.25. So I was typically working 7.25 an hour jobs. Occasionally, I'd work, $8 an hour, 8.50 an hour. I wasn't making much money at all. I stumbled upon security work whenever I was working at a GNC at one point, and in my area the base pay that I was finding was about $10 an hour, and that was pretty much the bare minimum you'd find. That was like these sites are paying awfully, you probably wouldn't want to work at those anyways, but it was still $2 an hour more than I was making. And so I started applying away. Now, for those that don't know, security is a business that requires you to be licensed. Some states have the levels beginning at level 1. A lot of states have you begin at level 2. Texas is one of those states. We don't even have a level 1 license. The basic security license is the level 2. But getting a level 2 license is a very easy process. Most anywhere you go, it's passing a test and passing a background check. So no felonies, no crimes in the past X number of years. They might do a couple other checks beyond that, but I really think it's mainly just the background check. So when you pass the test and you pass the background check, you get in the industry. Woohoo! So that would have been back in probably 2017, where I would have started working in the industry. And so I was working the security jobs, and I realized they had a lot of hours open. People quit constantly in the security industry, and because of the low barrier to entry, you see a lot of people leaving the industry constantly too, and also taking higher and higher positions because, like I mentioned, you start at level 2. There are 2 more levels above that. Level 3 is armed security, and level 4 is what's called PPO. It's private security. Typically, it's your suit and tie armed security. So if you think of, what a celebrity might have around them, they're probably level 4, if not just some other external type of private security. But so for level 2 jobs, people very often would get the level 3 license and move on to armed security, doing things like, like Brinks and things like that. Basic armed security things that involved banks, simply because it would typically come with a $2 to $3 an hour raise. So, rambling aside, all of that happening made it to where there were a lot of open shifts available in the company I was working in. I was very fortunate that the first security job I had was in one of the largest companies, I think, in the country. At the very least, it's the biggest company in Houston. They've been buying out companies left and right the past few years. They've almost got a monopoly practically. So there were always hours available, and I was purposefully hired on as a flex officer, which meant I didn't necessarily have one assigned post that I would be, Monday through Friday, these hours. It was more of, I typically would fill in some sort of schedule like that for a post, but I could also be called on to most any other post within a given area. They wouldn't have me out in West Houston and then send me over to Northeast Houston, most likely, but they would absolutely send me from a West Houston location to a West Houston location if they needed the help there. They never demanded the overtime, but they made it an option, and I realized very quickly how lucrative that overtime was to me. It happened very regularly where I would work a regular week, and I'd make somewhere between $400 and $500 weekly paychecks, which at 18, 19 years old still wasn't horrendous. It wasn't great, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't awful. It paid my bills and then some at the time. But then I realized in these overtime weeks where I'd be working an extra 20 to 25 hours, I'd be effectively doubling my income. And that's not even mentioning the fact that by working that overtime, I was framing myself as a more reliable employee that could be trusted to get the job done, which would thus open up more hours for me and more favorable hours for me. So I wasn't getting the $10 an hour posts, I was getting the $12, the $13, the $14 an hour posts. So back then, the way that I made my life work around working 90 to 100-hour weeks was I got into polyphasic sleeping. A lot of you might know what that is. A lot of you might not. Basically, what it is it's instead of sleeping like we do, like 8 hours overnight, you break it up into multiple phases, hence polyphasic. There are a lot of different types, and they have very different, varying levels of intensity. You have ones that are achievable by most anyone with just some basic sleep training, and then there are some that are extremely beyond extreme. A couple that haven't had any long-term testing done and may be very hazardous to health. If you want to look into it, it's actually a really interesting concept. I really liked learning about it and doing it. But how I would sleep was that every night, or whatever my night ended up being, sometimes I worked evenings and overnights, so my nighttime was more like 9 a.m. to like 2 p.m. But I would get between 4 and 5 hours of sleep in a block typically, and then at some point during the rest of the day I would take a 1 hour nap. There are a lot of different ways you can frame that, a lot of different ways that can work, but that was how I did it because it worked well with my schedule. It still gave me free time outside of work, but it set me up to where I could work the shifts that I was working and I wasn't a hazard to myself or others, because that's very, very important to me. Every security job I've had has required a lot of driving, whether it was on the job or just getting there. And it is never worth giving up safety or putting safety even at even slight risk just to make a little bit more money. It's not worth it, and it wasn't worth it to me then. So that was how I did it. It made it to where I would never be tired. I was never compromised in that manner. So back then, it was just polyphasic sleeping. I was single. I lived alone. I really just existed on my own schedule. If other people wanted to hang out, that was great. But I would just be very, very specific with them. I'd say, I'm free from here to here. If you're not, that's okay. We can find a day I'm off and hopefully do something different. But as it stands, if I'm working this day, I only have X amount of time to hang out. And most people were cool with it. And those that weren't, I mean, whatever, no skin off my back. But so fast forward, I guess 3 years now, and I'm back in security. I had briefly taken a break from it to do some other stuff, but I'm back in the industry at least part of my time. Now the way that I work 90 hours a week is a lot easier and a lot more sustainable, and I could easily add 30 to 40 hours on and not even notice it for the most part, other than separation from my daughter. I'd miss her a lot. But the easiest way to do it now is just simply the night security job that I got allows me to sleep. Obviously, it's not a matter of I get here and I sleep for 7 hours and I go home. I'm still doing the job that I was given, because even if it was okay for me to just sleep the whole time, I wouldn't feel good doing it. Because at the end of the day, I'm here for a reason. They don't hire security and pay the pretty high fees that companies will charge just for me to sleep in my car. So it's a really good arrangement, and I'm massively appreciative, but I never want to take it for granted because I could so easily lose it if I did. But what this has allowed me to do is it makes it to where I make ballpark $1,100 to $1,200 every 2 weeks at this job, and it's almost no extra effort. It's no extra burden to me in terms of my mental state, in terms of like lack of sleep, none of that. I get to do what it is that I want to do to a decent extent, which for instance is how I record these videos. I've mentioned that before, but this job is the reason that I can make these videos. And one day I hope to record them outside of work. But having this job is what allows me to do that. If not for the fact that this job gave me the allowance to sleep, I would not be able to do an overnight job anymore. Even though I'm only 22, I'm already feeling the effects of not being 18 to 19. I can't just stay up all night constantly, because very largely what allowed me to before was that my circadian rhythm got so insanely messed up from me switching between nights and days that my body effectively gave up. It said, I don't care anymore. Sleep when you sleep. Go for it. But nowadays I have slightly healthier habits. And so with that being said, I can't just decide to stay up for a full overnight shift and then in the morning drive home and with 100% confidence know that I will be safe. And that's really important to me, especially now that I have people actually relying on me. I wouldn't be able to do it. Full stop, I wouldn't. At least not while still having obligations during the day. If I was sleeping during the day and working at night, sure, that's fine, whatever. But it's thanks to being able to sleep like this that I'm able to, exist at this job and still work during the day. And then during the day, I am a pipe fitting apprentice. It pays a lot more than my security job. The hourly rate is almost exactly 50% higher, and that's as a first-year apprentice. A quick aside, if you can get into a trade through a union, do it. Holy crap, the pay is so much better often than you'd get from a non-union job. Just saying. And I might do a video on that in the future, just, why I'm doing what I'm doing. But yeah, so because I'm able to sleep at night, I'm able to work during the day the way that I do. As it stands right now, the pipe fitting stuff, more or less will give 40 hours flat. But in the cases in which overtime is available, I can take it. And I'll be making, $27, $28, I think, an hour, somewhere around there. Which is, for me, massive. That's a huge income boost. And I don't feel the effects of it because I know that at the end of that overtime shift, if it's a day that I'm working here, I come here and I can rest. And if it's a day I'm not working here, I go home and I rest. So I know no matter what I'm doing, I can still rest. And could I still go back and relearn the polyphasic sleep schedule that I had and make that work? Absolutely. There's a reason that a lot of the sleep schedules, especially the much more mild ones, are typically considered to be doable by anyone, even people who are, the quintessential can't wake up without caffeine, et cetera, kind of people. You can still train yourself to function in those manners and not suffer significant side effects. However, for the time being, I don't have to. And there's not much benefit that I gain by doing so because of the nature of this job. Will I do it one day? I don't know. Maybe. But as it stands right now, I work 90 hours a week and I don't even feel it. My ideal work week nowadays would probably be adding about 20 to 30 hours of overtime with the pipe fitting. Simply because it would pay a lot. It'd be a lot more money I can save and invest. And it would set me up to be, a little bit more stable. And it helps set me up to where I get closer to the point where I don't have to work this many hours. Because one day I don't want to have to, if I still choose to, okay. Highly doubt I'll choose to work triple-digit number of hours past the point where I need to. But, I don't know. I've only been an adult for close to 5 years at this point, and I've still got another, hopefully, 60 or 70 of them. Who knows where that's going to push me. But with all that being said, I thought this video might be helpful just because you hear a lot from people who are workaholics who talk about, they work 16-hour days, like the Gary V's of the world. But you don't hear very often about how they do that. And I also feel as though most of those people, they're typically talking about working from effectively sunrise to sunset, But I feel as though it gets a little bit more complicated whenever you push that to including an overnight, just because of the natural tendency that we have to be tired at nighttime. Working through that can be very difficult for people, and it can be very jarring and difficult to be functional both during the day and at night every single day. You kind of get a burning the candle on both ends kind of situation. But all that being said, thank you guys for watching. If anyone wants any clarifications on what I said or anything, I would be more than happy to share them. I know that this was very all over the place. A lot of it was just kind of like my employment background. But I've always worked these kinds of hours, and so I thought it might be helpful seeing the two different ways that I've made it work. And in the future, if a third way ends up popping up, maybe I'll make a third video then, But thank you so much for watching. If you guys have anything to say, leave it in the comments below. If you like the video, like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to see more of this stuff, please do subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And it really helped this channel take off. But all that being said, rambling aside, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.